Ethan lived a life that many would call quiet, maybe even lonely. He was 34 years old, tall, with kind eyes that rarely looked up when he walked. His world was simple. He worked as a mechanic at a small repair shop in town. Every day was the same. He fixed cars, cleaned his hands with an old cloth, and walked home alone through the same narrow streets. He didn't have many friends, not because he was unkind, but because life had slowly taught him to keep his heart closed. In the evenings, he liked silence. His small apartment was on the second floor of an old building. The walls were faded but clean. The only sound that filled the room was from his old radio, which played soft music. He didn't mind being alone, or at least that's what he told himself. Sometimes he would look out of the window and watch people walk by in pairs, laughing, talking, holding hands, and a quiet ache would rise in his chest. But he would turn away, make a cup of tea, and let the music carry him through the night. That evening, everything began like any other. The sky was turning orange as the sun slowly set. Ethan locked the shop's door, picked up his small bag, and started walking home. The streets were almost empty except for a few cars, and the soft sound of the wind moving through the trees. He liked this time of day. It was peaceful. As he walked past the park, he noticed a single bench under a streetlight. That bench was special to him. Years ago, he had once sat there with a woman he thought would stay in his life forever. She didn't, but the memory stayed. He walked past it quickly, not wanting to stir old feelings. Ethan's boots made soft sounds on the pavement. He reached the corner where the street narrowed between two buildings. This alley was short, and he often took it as a shortcut. It was usually quiet, almost too quiet. As he entered the alley, he heard something unusual. A faint sound. It was soft at first, like a whisper. He stopped. Then it grew louder. It was a cry. A frightened voice. His heart started to beat faster. He looked ahead. At the end of the alley, under a flickering light, a young woman was struggling with someone who seemed to be pulling her by the wrist. Her voice trembled as she said, "Please let me go." For a moment, Ethan froze. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't used to stepping into anyone's problems. He had spent so much of his life staying quiet, minding his own business. But something inside him moved that night. Maybe it was the way her voice shook. Maybe it was the way she looked scared. He didn't even think twice. He walked quickly toward them. His voice was calm but firm as he said, "Hey, stop." She said, "Let her go." The figure looked at him and then slowly stepped back. The woman took the chance to pull away and moved toward Ethan. She was breathing hard, her face pale but her eyes bright with fear. "Thank you," she whispered. The other person gave Ethan a sharp look, then turned and walked away into the dark street without another word. Ethan's hands were slightly shaking. He hadn't done anything dramatic, but for him that moment was big. He turned to her. "Are you okay?" She nodded slowly. "Yes, I think so." She was young, maybe in her mid-20s. Her long hair fell over her shoulders. She wore a light dress and held a small bag close to her chest. Even though her voice was shaky, she tried to stay strong. They stepped out of the alley into the open street. The night air was cool and soft. A nearby shop light made everything look golden. Ethan could see her face more clearly now. She had soft features, gentle eyes, and a calm presence even though she had just gone through something frightening. "I can call someone," Ethan offered. "Or the police if you want." She shook her head quickly. "No, please. It's okay. I just want to go home," Ethan nodded. He didn't ask questions. Something about her made him want to protect her without needing to know everything. He offered to walk her a little farther just to make sure she was safe. She hesitated, then gave a small nod. As they walked side by side down the quiet street, neither of them spoke for a while. She held her bag close and he kept his hands in his pockets, unsure of what to say. The silence between them didn't feel heavy. It was strangely gentle, like two people who didn't know each other but somehow understood each other's quiet. After a few minutes, she finally spoke. "Thank you. If you weren't there, I don't know what would have happened. I was just on my way home, and then everything changed so fast." Ethan gave a small smile, the kind that came slowly. "I'm just glad I was walking by." She looked at him carefully, almost as if she was trying to read his thoughts. "You're not from around here, are you?" He nodded. "I work here. Mechanic shop down the road." A soft laugh left her lips. "I've passed that place so many times. I never thought I'd meet the man who works there like this." He chuckled quietly. It felt nice, foreign but nice. They stopped near a corner where the road split into two directions. She pointed toward the left. My house is just down that way. I'll be fine from here. He nodded, even though a part of him didn't want the moment to end. All right then. Take care of yourself. She hesitated, then extended her hand. Clara, she said with a soft smile. Ethan, he replied, shaking her hand gently. For a second their eyes met, and something wordless passed between them. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was something real. A kind of quiet connection that neither of them expected. She waved goodbye and began walking down the street. He stood there for a moment, watching her go. The night felt different now. The quiet didn't feel so empty. When Ethan finally got home, the small apartment felt the same. Silent, still, warm with soft radio music. But something inside him had shifted. He sat on the couch, staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment again and again. Her voice, the look in her eyes, the way his own heart had moved without warning. He didn't know why it mattered so much. It was only a brief moment. But to someone who had lived in quiet shadows for years, even a small light felt bright. The next morning, Ethan woke up earlier than usual. He didn't know what he expected. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. The memory of the night before lingered like a gentle echo. He got ready for work, picked up his bag, and walked the same route he always did. But when he passed the same alley, he slowed down. He could still see the faint glow of the streetlight. The place felt ordinary again, but to him it wasn't. It was the place where something unexpected happened. The place where his quiet life had shifted by a single moment of courage. All day at work, he tried to focus on fixing cars, changing oil, and talking to customers. But his mind kept drifting. He thought about her name, Clara. He thought about her soft smile. He thought about the way she had looked at him, not like a stranger, but like someone who mattered, even if only for a moment. That evening, as the sun set again, he found himself glancing around while walking home. A part of him hoped to see her again, even if it was just from a distance. He didn't know why. Maybe it was because she made the quiet feel less lonely. And on the other side of town, Clara sat by her window holding the small ring on her finger. It wasn't a ring she chose. It was a ring her family wanted her to wear. She thought about the man she had met in the alley, the quiet man with kind eyes who didn't know her but stood up for her anyway. She pressed her hand against her chest and whispered to herself, "Why does it feel like I've known him longer than just one night?" Neither of them knew what tomorrow would bring. But both of them felt it. Something had started. Something they couldn't name yet. Something that would change everything. The morning came softly, with a sky painted in shades of gold and pale blue. Ethan opened his eyes earlier than usual, as if something inside him knew that this day was going to be different. For years, his mornings had been silent and predictable. He would get up, wash his face, make tea, and walk to the shop. But today his heart was awake before his body was. He didn't know why, but he felt it. He stood near the window of his small apartment and looked at the street below. The bakery across the road had just opened, and the smell of fresh bread floated through the air. A few people walked by with sleepy faces. Everything was ordinary, and yet inside him, nothing felt ordinary at all. As he got ready for work, his thoughts wandered to Clara. He thought about her soft voice, the way she had looked at him with those quiet, shining eyes. He remembered how her hand had felt when she shook his. Warm. Real. That moment in the alley, the way she trusted him without words, had stayed with him. It was strange how a few minutes could change everything in a man's heart. Ethan arrived at the workshop a little earlier than usual. He opened the door, turned on the lights, and listened to the familiar sound of the tools. It should have been just another day. But as the hours passed, he found himself looking at the door again and again, as if something might happen. And then it did. It was late morning when he saw her through the glass. Clara stood outside the workshop wearing a light blue dress and holding her small bag. Her hair moved softly with the wind. She looked different in the daylight, brighter, more alive. But her eyes carried something heavy too. A mix of fear, hope, and something she couldn't hide anymore. Ethan walked to the door slowly. His heart was beating faster than it had in a long time. He pushed the door open and their eyes met again, just like the night before. For a moment, neither of them spoke. It was as if the world around them had gone silent. "Hi," she said softly. "Hi," he replied, his voice just as quiet. She took a small step forward.
Can I talk to you?
He nodded and held the door open. She walked inside, looking around at the simple workshop, tools hanging neatly on the wall, a small radio playing low music, and the faint smell of oil. She didn't seem to mind. It was as if she belonged there, even though she didn't. Ethan wiped his hands on a cloth and leaned gently against the work table. Is everything okay? Clara pressed her lips together. For a moment, she said nothing. Her fingers played nervously with the strap of her bag. Then slowly, her eyes lifted to meet his. I couldn't stop thinking about you, she whispered. Ethan froze. Her voice wasn't loud, but the words felt heavy, like they carried everything she'd been holding back. About me? He asked softly. She nodded. Yes, about last night. About how you helped me. About how I felt when I was next to you. I don't even understand it fully, but I know it's real. Ethan didn't know what to say. No one had ever said something like that to him. For years he had walked through life like a shadow, quiet, unnoticed. And now, someone was standing in front of him, looking at him like he mattered. Clara took a deep breath and sat on the wooden chair near the table. Her hands were still trembling a little. I'm supposed to marry someone, she said softly. Someone my family chose. I've tried to convince myself it's the right thing, that I'll be fine. But last night, when I thought everything could end so suddenly, I realized I was living a life I didn't choose. Ethan's chest felt tight. He wanted to say something, but he didn't want to interrupt. She was speaking from a place deep inside, and he could see it in her eyes. I don't love him, she continued. I've never loved him. I was just trying to do what was expected of me, to make everyone else happy. But when you helped me last night, when you just looked at me and asked if I was okay, it felt like someone actually saw me. Not as a promise, not as a responsibility, just me. Ethan lowered his gaze. He wasn't used to being someone's turning point. He was just an ordinary man who lived in silence. But somehow he had become something more in her eyes. Clara leaned forward slightly. Her voice was soft but clear now. Ethan, I can't pretend anymore. I don't want to live a life that doesn't belong to me. I want to choose my own path. I want to choose someone who makes me feel safe and seen and real. He felt his heart pounding. He had imagined moments like this in dreams he never told anyone about, but dreams were supposed to stay hidden, not come walking through the door in a blue dress. Clara's hands clenched together and she whispered, I want to be with you. If you'll have me. The words hung in the air like a quiet storm. For Ethan, time seemed to stop. He had lived so many years thinking that love wasn't meant for him, that some people were just meant to walk alone. And now this woman, this soft and strong soul, was asking to be part of his world. Ethan took a deep breath. Clara, he said softly. I don't know what to say. I never thought anyone would say something like that to me. She looked at him with wide, honest eyes. I'm not asking you to promise me the world, she whispered. I'm just asking you to let me stay in yours. His chest felt warm in a way he couldn't explain. But beneath that warmth was a weight. This isn't a small thing, he said gently. What about your family? What about the life they've planned for you? Tears slowly filled her eyes, not out of sadness, but out of truth. I know it won't be easy, she said. But for once, I want to fight for what I want. For who I want. I've spent so long doing what everyone else wants. I can't live like that anymore. The workshop was quiet except for the faint music from the radio. Outside, the sun climbed higher, spilling golden light through the windows. It made the air between them feel warm and alive. Ethan took a small step toward her. He looked at her face, soft, honest, hopeful. He felt fear too. He was afraid of breaking something so delicate. But even stronger than fear was the feeling of being needed, chosen, seen. Clara stood slowly and wiped her eyes. She didn't beg. She didn't try to push him. She just looked at him with everything inside her heart. I'll understand if you can't, she said quietly. But I had to say it. I had to be honest at least once in my life. Ethan reached out and gently took her hand. Her fingers were small and warm. She didn't pull away, and neither did he. For a moment there were no words, only the soft sound of their breathing and the world outside moving at its own pace. He whispered, You're brave. She gave a small smile through her tears. No, she said. I'm just tired of being silent. They stood there like that for a while, two quiet souls who never expected to find each other but did. Maybe life had a way of bringing people together at the right time in the quietest of places. Ethan didn't give her big promises. He didn't say forever, but he didn't let go of her hand either. And sometimes that was enough. As the sun began to lower that day, Clara walked with Ethan through the same streets where their paths had first crossed. The world around them was the same, but it felt different. It felt full. People walked past them without noticing, but they didn't need anyone else to notice. This was their quiet story, a story of a man who lived in silence and a woman who found her voice. At a small park near the bench Ethan once avoided, they stopped. Clara looked at the old bench under the streetlight. "You walk this way every day, don't you?" she asked. He nodded. "Yeah," she smiled. "Then I guess this is where everything really began." He looked at her, and for the first time in a long time, Ethan felt something like light inside him. A new beginning. She gently leaned closer, her head resting near his shoulder, and the two of them stood there, watching the world move around them, not needing anything else. And just like that, the man who once lived in quiet loneliness found himself standing next to someone who had chosen him, not because of who the world wanted her to be, but because of who she truly was. They didn't know what the future would bring. There would be challenges, questions, and decisions. But in that moment, none of it mattered. What mattered was that two souls had found each other, not through grand plans, but through a single honest moment of courage, and sometimes that is how love truly begins, not with noise, but with silence that finally feels full.